I have so many conversations with myself that I don't usually feel confident having in social setups. But I am pretty sure I am not alone. Join me on this podcast as I have these conversations unapologetically loud. My name is June Robinson, and welcome to another episode of Cut the Monologue. Happy New Year. I am pretty sure you're going to ask yourself, why is June wishing us a Happy New Year on the 8th day of the month? But I have to, because this is the first episode that I am having with you guys. It's the first episode of the month. It's also the first episode of the year. So I personally feel like it would be rude if I don't use the Happy New Year greeting, but Happy New Year. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. And before we get in deep into this week's episode, what did you do? What did you do to cross over to this year? I did something completely new, completely out of the box. I went to a social place. Yay! No, I didn't go to a club. I didn't go. I went to a mall. I went to cross over the new year in a mall, and it was so exciting. For people who know me on a personal level, they understand how difficult it is for me to go out, especially to social places that I am sure are already socially full. I don't do that. Not that I don't go to social places. I do. I just don't go to social places on days where I am 100% sure there are going to be crowds. But at this time I did it and I had fun. I was in my head a little bit in terms of freaking out and just coming up with these worst case scenarios in my head, but it was actually exciting. What did you do? If you do not mind sharing, you can of course share them on the comment section of any of our social pages. You can share that. I also want to apologize if you hear any chirping. The birds are out and they're happy, and I am not going to go outside and start chasing the birds away. So bear with me. Assis still does not have a soundproof studio, but you know what? Dreams are valid. Dreams are 100% valid, and I know I will get there. So welcome again. Welcome to this week's episode. And this week we are going to talk about unveiling the darkness within. We are going to talk about unveiling the darkness within, and we are focusing on sexual abuse that happens within families. And I know it is a very sensitive topic because no one likes to put their families out on blast. But at the same time, we cannot let this monstrous behavior, this monstrous pandemic to continue. So I know from those of you who are listening to me, we have the percentage of people who know that this happens. We have the percentage of people who this has happened to. We have the percentage of people who know someone who this has happened to. And we have another percentage of people who I would like to refer to them as the lucky ones in this universe who don't know that there's anything of this sort that is happening. And they are extremely lucky because it means that these families have done a very, very excellent job at hiding this reality that is happening in them. So, in today's episode, I want us to delve into the deeply sensitive, and it's a very sensitive topic and often shrouded topic of sexual abuse within families. It is a reality and it persists behind closed doors, and it impacts countless of lives. And we are here to unveil the layers of secrecy and the layers of denial that surround this issue. We are here to shed a light on the harrowing experience of victims. And we're also here to shed a light on the lengths to which families may go to hide and protect perpetrators, all in the name of being families and the profound implications on familial dynamics. So I feel like by us having this discussion and by us confronting the uncomfortable truths surrounding family sexual abuse, we are embarking on a journey to foster awareness, empathy, and understanding, and we seek to break the silence that perpetuates this pervasive cycle of harm. One thing that I know is that families are the first level of social interaction that as children get to engage in. So what happens when this family does not offer you the comfort? What happens when this so-called family does not keep you safe? What happens then? What happens when you go quiet because of the abuse that this family, the sexual abuse that this family has inflicted upon you? What happens then? So one thing is, it is very important to shed light on this issue in order to break the cycle of silence and secrecy. So shedding a light, it breaks the cycle of silence and secrecy that perpetuates the harm. Because the more we are quiet about this issue, the more we continue brushing it under the rug, the moment we continue tossing a curtain over it, we keep on giving the perpetrators the field to continue with this harm that they are inflicting on these family members. And so by addressing this sensitive topic openly, we not only acknowledge the existence of a pervasive problem, but we are also empowering the survivors to speak out and to seek support. And I want to mention some of the potential impact on victims and family dynamics. So the impact of sexual abuse within families, it extends far beyond the immediate act, leaving lasting scars on both victims and the intricate fabric of family dynamics. For survivors, the trauma manifests in profound emotional, psychological, and physical consequences, influencing their overall well-being and future relationships. Simultaneously, the secrecy and cover-up surrounding the abuse contribute to a toxic family environment, perpetuating cycles of denial, guilt, and shame. So, like I have said, family is the first level of social interaction that a majority of us get to engage with. But then what happens when this family, these people who are the first people you know, become the first people who do this sort of monstrous harm on you? What happens? What happens then? This monstrous act, what do you do then? These are the people who you know in case of any harm that happens to you in this outside world, you can turn to them. But what happens when they turn against you and they start doing these evil things on you? What happens then? It will automatically affect how you view the rest of the world, because your number one thing that will be going around your head is, if this was done to me by someone who I consider family, by someone who, not who you consider family, by someone who is my family, what about this person who is not my family? What are they going to do to me? Okay, so it is something that should be openly discussed, because by us openly discussing it, it means we acknowledge that it exists. And it means that we are ready to bring down the curtains that are hiding this thing. It means we are ready to remove it from under the rug, and we are able to put it in the open and discuss it, so that we can let the victims know that you are heard, we see you, and it's time for you to get your redemption. It's time for you to know that they did not protect you, but that should not be your story. You get a chance of writing your story all over again. So, family sexual abuse. It refers to any form of unwanted sexual activity or coercion occurring within a family setting. The distressing phenomenon includes, but is not limited to, sexual assault, molestation, incest, or any other violation of an individual's boundaries by a family member. So the other thing that I want us to be clear of is, sexual abuse within family members is not something that is exclusive to a certain demographic of people. It's something that cuts across all the demographics. Whether you're a rich family or you're a poor family, sexual abuse within the family is prone to either one of these two. Whether you're an educated family or a non-educated family, sexual abuse is prevalent in any one of the two families. So it is not something that exists within a certain demographic of people. No, it is something that can happen in any family setup, anywhere in the world. It's not something that exclusively maybe to Black people or African people. It's something that can happen in any type of family. So there are so many types of abuse that happen within families, and I want us to talk about the different types of abuse that happen within families before we continue focusing on sexual abuse. So the abuse within family setups takes on various forms, each with its own detrimental impact on victims. One type of abuse that occurs within families is physical abuse, and this usually involves the use of force that results in bodily harm, while we also have emotional or psychological abuse that mainly inflicts trauma through verbal degradation, manipulation, or intimidation. Sexual abuse, which is one of the most sensitive and prevalent form, encompasses unwanted sexual advances. Okay, we also have neglect as another form of family abuse, and this occurs when caregivers fail to meet a child's basic needs, hence jeopardizing their physical or emotional well-being. Additionally, we have financial abuse, which involves exploiting control over someone's financial resources. By us recognizing the diverse manifestations of abuse within families, it is crucial in comprehending the complexity of these issues and addressing them effectively in order to promote a safe and nurturing environment for family members. So, some of the myths and misconceptions that surround sexual abuse. The first thing is we need to dispel common misconception and myths surrounding family abuse in order for us to foster a clear understanding of this deeply sensitive issue. Like I said, in order for this topic of discussion for today, which is sexual abuse within families, in order for us to be able to clearly address it, we cannot clearly address an issue if we do not address the most common myth or the most common misconception that exists. And the most common myth and misconception that exists is that family sexual abuse only occurs in dysfunctional or impoverished households. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The reality is, and as I have mentioned, the reality is it can affect families across all socio-economic backgrounds. The other myth that exists is the assumption that the abusers are always strangers. Most of the time, the perpetrators have very close familial ties. It could be your father, it could be your mother, it could be your uncle, it could be your aunt, it could be your brother, it could be your stepbrother, it could be your sister, or it could be your stepsisters. Another one is that some may mistakenly think that only girls are victims, disregarding the reality that abuse can affect individuals of any gender. Additionally, the notion that victims always immediately disclose the abuse, it hinders us from recognizing the silent suffering many endure. One thing you should know is that people don't talk, especially when it's something that has happened to a family member, done by a family member. This is someone who you frequently see during family gatherings. This is someone who you constantly see during a wedding to another relative, and you see them and they're there. So for us assuming that people openly speak about it makes it impossible for us to talk about the people who suffer in silence. Now that we have made ourselves familiar with some of the common myths and misconceptions that surround the topic of sexual abuse within families, let's explore the reasons why family members go to great lengths to hide and protect the perpetrator. One of the most common reasons why family members go to great lengths to hide and protect the perpetrator of family sexual abuse is due to the complex interplay of emotions, dynamics, and societal pressures. Shame and guilt also play a significant role, especially because family members they feel embarrassed about the abuse occurring within their own home. They fear judgment and societal stigma. Remember, this is not something that everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to create this image, this facade that our family is normal, you know? They feel embarrassed about the abuse occurring within their own home. They fear judgment and societal stigma. So the desire to maintain a facade of normalcy often can lead to denial, with some family members convincing themselves that the abuse did not happen or downplaying its severity. The severity could be the perpetrator or the abuser is maybe in their 50s or in their 60s, and the victim is 18. Not actually 18. You may find the victim could be 8 or 10. So they want to be like, no, by the time this victim grows to 24 or 25, they will have forgotten about this incident. Not knowing that there are certain things that happen that create a permanent mark in our memory. And this is where you find that someone has certain cases of trauma, but they're not really sure where they got it from until the time where they start unpacking it. Okay? And this is called repression. And it is the act of this theory basically. It suggests that your brain can protect you from painful or traumatic events by hiding them from your conscious mind. Okay? And it's something that does exist. And you find yourself that you have certain behaviors that you cannot clearly pinpoint where they come from, but then you don't know that it's your brain that is protecting you from this traumatic experience that you had when you were 8 years old that was inflicted by a 50-year-old person. Okay? Loyalty is also another reason why family members go to great lengths to hide and protect perpetrators. Loyalty to the family unit also contributes, as exposing the abuse may be perceived as betraying the family. Fear of legal consequences and the potential breakup of the family further motivates the concealment of the perpetrator's action. Additionally, some family members may genuinely struggle to believe that someone they know and love could be capable of such harm, leading to a cognitive dissonance that perpetuates silence and protection. This is whereby you are in disbelief that this person who you refer to as family, who you've seen in family gatherings, who maybe in certain situations you have gone to them for advice, or you have called them in your time of need, or maybe this is someone who you turned to help because they were in need, but then this person goes ahead and does this act on another family member. It makes someone to be in disbelief. I can't believe it. And so this act of being in disbelief, it leads to silence. And let's assume that did not happen because this cannot be the same person who I know. Okay? And with this, it just continues giving the abuser a field to continue with their abuse. And there are so many other things that contribute to the silence. And these are the dynamics of fear, the dynamics of shame, and the dynamics of guilt that play a profound role in perpetuating the silence surrounding family sexual abuse. The fear that these family members often have, it stems from the potential consequences of disclosing the abuse, including retaliation from the perpetrator, societal judgment, or legal repercussions. This fear, in most cases, can paralyze victims and their families, creating a reluctance to speak out. Shame is another powerful force, as victims may internalize feelings of disgrace and self-blame. This is where someone starts telling themselves, maybe it was a sleepover amongst cousins, and they start self-blaming and they're like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have gone. Maybe what I wore is what led them to that. And so they start self-blaming themselves. They start feeling like they are a disgrace, believing that the abuse reflects negatively on their identity or family reputation. Similarly, family members may experience shame for not preventing the abuse or for being associated with the perpetrator. Guilt compounds these emotions, with victims and sometimes even non-abusing family members feeling responsible for the actions of the perpetrator or for not taking action sooner. The intricate interplay of fear, shame, and guilt creates a toxic atmosphere of secrecy, making it incredibly challenging for victims to come forward and or for families to address the issue openly. And so you find that fear, shame, and guilt, they are so intertwined in a way that instead of the family addressing this aspect of fear, this aspect of shame, and this aspect of guilt head on, they choose to just be quiet about this whole situation. And so breaking this cycle requires fostering an environment that supports disclosure, empathy, and understanding, mitigating the emotional burdens that contribute to the silence surrounding family sexual abuse. And so I want to share an example. And during my second year at campus, and this is what motivated me into this aspect of sexual abuse in families, we took an academic trip to one of the family rescue homes. We actually have rescue homes where victims of such abuse are offered shelter from their families they live. And among them, we had there was a young boy at the time, because second year, this was back in 2016. Yes, this was back in 2016. There was a young boy who seemed to be around 7 years, 5 at the time. So the mother and the father happened to get into a domestic brawl where they were arguing. And after going back and forth at it for a while, the mother decides, let me get myself out of this situation. So she left. I don't know if she was leaving in terms of abandoning the marriage, or if she was leaving in terms of just exiting the arguing situation. But the mother left, and she left the son with the dad. And so the dad, in his state of anger, because that is how we were given the story, in his state of anger, he took the stainless steel tablespoon, just these ones that we usually just eat our suppers or our lunch, our meals with. Let me use that. And he put it on a flame. He ignited a flame, and he put the spoon on the flame. And so when the spoon got hot, I think he put like around 2-3 spoons on the flame. So when it got hot, he would take the spoon and he would burn the son over his genitals. He would burn the son with the spoon. Okay? And so the son started screaming, because it's a lot of pain. That is a lot of pain inflicted on someone so young. And the neighbor was like, no, this is not, normal crying. And when the neighbor came, the neighbor witnessed what the dad was doing to the son. So the neighbor immediately, called for help and everything. And that's when the son was taken away and was taken to this rescue home. So now here is where it gets sticky. The mother to the son, this is the wife, who they were having an argument with his husband. After it all quieted down, the mother went to the rescue home and started demanding for the son back. And she would come with other relatives and they would ask for the son back. And so it's a good thing that the rescue home, so of course I'm not going to reveal the rescue home and all this. So the rescue home refuses to give, at the time, they refuse to give back the child. And that is that. And so you can imagine having your brother or having a child. If you're, for those of us who already have children, for my listeners who already have children, you can imagine having your child go through that level of pain, only for you to start protecting the perpetrator again. And so this is just an example of the lengths that family members can go Another case was there was a lady who was sexually abused by the dad. And unfortunately, because in all honesty, I personally am not looking at this as a blessing. Unfortunately, the lady got pregnant by the dad. So the lady sought for help through her friend. And one way or the other, they found themselves in the rescue home that is owned by this woman. But then the mother would come to the rescue home just outside the gate with other aunties, that is, other sister in laws. And they would knock on the gate and demand that this rescue home lets this young girl go because she's supposed to be with her family. The same family that was supposed to protect her that didn't. The same family that has led to her being in this situation. So families do go for lengths, and it's this whole intricacy of fear, shame, and guilt. And so in the case of the young boy, the mother had guilt, but then it was not her fault. It is a psychological warfare of I should not have left. So now she's self-blaming herself. I should not have left my son there. I should have left with my son. Oh, it was my fault. I should have maybe put on a more serious type of clothing that would have taken the husband longer to remove from the son. And these are some of the things that I want to bring to light. And the impact that this has on victims ranges from psychological to emotional to physical. And they include post-traumatic stress disorder, which we normally refer to as PTSD. So many survivors experience PTSD, such as intrusive memories, nightmares, and hypervigilance, where someone is constantly self-aware of the environment they're in. They cannot let themselves chill. If this is someone who, if they come to visit you in their house, their eyes are constantly darting from one corner to the next. Okay, we have depression and anxiety. The trauma can lead to persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and heightened anxiety about their safety, self-esteem, and identity issues. The victims may struggle with negative self-perceptions and challenges in forming a healthy self-identity. We have the emotional impact, which is shame and guilt, where victims are often grappled with overwhelming feelings of shame and guilt, wrongly blaming themselves for the abuse. Trust issues, betrayal by a family member. Like I said, family should offer you comfort, should offer you care, can erode trust, making it challenging for survivors to form healthy relationships. Anger and self-destructive behaviors is just another impact. Physical consequences. We have chronic health issues. The stress from the abuse can contribute to various physical health problems, including chronic pain, headaches, and digestive issues. Substance abuse, whereby some survivors may turn to drugs or alcohol as a coping mechanism, leading to substance abuse issues. Okay. In all of this, how does the family dynamics enable the abuser? Denial and minimization. Family members who engage in denial and minimization of the abuse, dismissing signs or rationalizing the perpetrator's behavior, continues to drive a desire to maintain a facade of normalcy and avoid confronting the uncomfortable truth. Also, in situations where there is a significant power imbalance among families, such as when the abuser holds a position of authority or is a primary caregiver, the other family members may be hesitant to challenge or confront them for fear of retaliation or disruption of the family stability. Family loyalty, which is something that I have talked about, inadequate communication, cultural and religious beliefs, fear of fragmentation. So, what are some of the roles of denial, disbelief, and the normalization of abusive behavior within the family? Denial. It is a very powerful defense mechanism that family members may employ to cope with the discomfort and cognitive dissonance associated with the acknowledgement of abuse. And so, this is where individuals convince themselves that abuse is not occurring or that it is a misunderstanding, despite evidence to the contrary. And so denial is mainly fueled by the desire to maintain a sense of normalcy and avoid confronting the painful reality of abuse within the family unit. Disbelief, where family members may struggle to believe that someone within their own family, especially a trusted figure, could be capable of committing sexual abuse. And this is something that I have talked about. And some of the challenges that the victims face when trying to disclose the abuse within their family is the fear of retaliation. Victims usually fear that this same act of abuse is likely to be repeated onto them, especially in a scenario where the abuser holds some form of power within the family. Emotional manipulation, which is something that is often used on the victims so as to keep them silent and to not make them talk about this abuse. Shame and self-blame, lack of trust in support systems. This is in a situation where you find that the victims believe that whoever they should turn to in such situations is likely to not trust them. Fear of family disintegration, cultural and religious stigma, minimization of the abuse, where people look at the abuse as something so minor that the victim will grow out of. Okay, this is also one of the reasons that makes victims do not come out. Lack of knowledge about available resources. So one thing that I came across when I was doing research on this topic for today is that there are so many helplines that have been created where someone can turn to in such scenarios, and I will of course stick them at least some of them with the episode. I will highlight them. I will highlight them on our social media pages, that is Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I want us to now look at the importance of having such conversations like what we are having. The first one is victims often carry the burden of shame, guilt, and self-blame. So a safe space offers validation, assuring survivors that their experiences are acknowledged, believed, and taken seriously. Speaking out about abuse can be emotionally challenging. Safe spaces provide a platform where survivors can express their feelings without judgment, receive empathy, and access emotional support crucial for their well-being. Breaking the silence, encouraging disclosure, empowerment, and regaining control. That is, by sharing their stories in a safe space, it empowers the survivors. It allows them to regain a sense of control about their lives. Building trust, access to resources, promoting healing and resilience, and also raising awareness about this. So it is a very sensitive topic, but it is a topic that needs to be had. We need this to be the beginning of such conversations. We need the victims to know that they are heard. We need the victims to be able to regain back their power, to be able to regain back control, in order for them to feel that they matter, in order for them to feel that this is a safe society and you are allowed to speak about your hearts, the heartful experiences that you went through. And with that, we come to the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you on the next episode. That's it for this episode of Cut the Monologue. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms at Cut the Monologue. That is Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And also follow us on all streaming platforms and turn your notifications on to always get notified whenever we drop an episode. Until the next episode, goodbye for now.